Okay, I'd like to call to order the Metro North Committee meeting for the month of July. I need a motion to approve minutes as submitted, please.
Move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Committee work plan?
Yes, can I, before we do that, just a couple of things I'd like to do. I wanted to introduce two people to the committee who you may have seen, but they're now in new roles. First, George Oakvat. George is the acting Senior Director of Customer Service. George has been at the railroad for many years. He informed me, I think it was about 40, if I recall correctly, and has taken on an acting basis Tom Tendy's role. Tom has moved down to to the BSC, Business Service Center. And secondly, I wanted to introduce Bob Walker. Bob is our acting Assistant Vice President of Maintenance of Way, taking the position that Bob Lieblong had. Bob also has been with the railroad about 40 years, has been in the power department, and has had a series of different functions in the MOW department. So I wanted to introduce both of them to you. Those are two of the key members of the Metro North team. The other thing I do want to mention, since the next time we meet will be in September, is that one of the things we are working diligently on is the new service to the Meadowlands that will be starting in September, and actually will be starting the joint ticketing will be starting in August. The actual operation of our first through train, New Haven, New Jersey Transit through train, will actually be the day before the committee meeting. So this is going to be a very big event and operation for Metro North as well as New Jersey Transit. And this is where we'll be running direct trains from the New Haven line through Penn Station to Secaucus, where people will be able to get a shuttle that runs every 10 minutes to the Giant and Jet games. And I don't recall if it's a Giant or Jet game on that Sunday. I think it's a Jet game at 1 o'clock. So that will be our first train, and that will happen throughout the fall of this year. That's a pilot program, and I just wanted everyone to be aware of that.
Okay, committee work plan, I don't think there's any changes. Status of operations. Bob.
Good morning, everybody. The status of operations is outlined on page 14 in your handbook. In June, we operated at 98.1%, which was above our goal of 97.6%. It's good to note that the entire second quarter of this year, we actually ran over 98%, so it was a nice rebound from a shaky start we had this winter. Actually, at the end of March, we were at 97.2, I think, year to date, and now we're back up to 97.8, which is exceeding our goal. All the categories were really above goal. AM peak was at 98.4, above the goal of 96.8. The PM peak was at 98.2, above the goal of 97.7. Off-peak was the only one that was below, and that was slightly off-peak on weekends. We ran at 97.8, which was 1/10 below our goal of 97.9. But every category was above goal. Out of the 17,898 trains, only 349 operated late, of which 68 were more than 15 minutes late. And it's also nice to note that 98.2% of our trains operated with a full consist. On the west of Hudson, which is on page 18, another good month there also. We operated at 97.3%, above our goal of 96.2. The Port Jervis ran at 96.3, above the goal of 95, and the Pascack Valley ran at 98, above a goal of 97. There were a total of 45 trains out of 1,668 which ran late, and only 16 of those were greater than 15 minutes. Rolling right into the MDBF. That information is outlined on page 20 of your handbook. Again, it's a good story. We had a 109,159 MDBF over a goal of 105,000. That's the second month in a row that we have exceeded our goal. We put together back-to-back months following the bad winter where we had quite a bit of problems with our M4s and M6s with snow ingestion. They're still our worst performers, but we're back on track again. So, and that's it. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Any questions for Bob? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kim.
Good morning, all. The May financial report begins on page 27.
For the month of May, the net deficit for non-reimbursable activity was favorable to budget by $3.9 million, or 7.1%. And for the year-to-date May, net deficit for non-reimbursable activity also continues to be favorable to budget by $13.2 million, or 4.4%. We continue to see that negative variances from revenues as a result of our declining ridership are being offset by our positive variances in the expenditures areas in the two major categories, total labor and total non-labor. As relates to revenues, total revenues was unfavorable to budget for the month and year-to-date by $3.3 million, or 7%, and $7 million, or 3.2%, respectively. Even after excluding the impact of the timing difference on the opening of May 23rd for the new Yankee Stadium 125th Street station, May's unfavorable variance to budget for ridership is effectively negative 5% compared to earlier variances that range around 3.5%. These results show that our ridership is experiencing further negative impacts of lower regional employment and an economy that was beyond the levels that we'd seen at the end of 2008 and the beginning of 2009. As mentioned earlier, on the expenditure side, we are favorable to budget by $4.8 million, or 6.4%, and $11.5 million, or 3%, for the month and year-to-date, respectively. Of special note, I'd like to mention that for the month of May, overtime was favorable to budget by $700,000, or 15%. Vacancy coverages, weather-related coverage, and emergency repairs to the right-of-way due to the wheel loss incident earlier in this year had resulted in overspending in the area of overtime. An overtime reduction plan was implemented by Metro-North at the beginning of May to reduce the overtime spending for the remaining months of the year and obtain the ability to achieve budget balance. As we see with the results for May, that those goals and those objectives were met, and we will continue to monitor those efforts in the management of overtime spending. In summary, year-to-date net cash deficit continues to be favorable to budget by $19 million. All other details have been provided in your report, and I can answer any questions.
Any questions for Kim? Thanks, Kim. Monthly ridership.
Good morning. The May monthly ridership report is in the committee book, pages 41 through 50. I'll review some key May ridership results. And as you will see, the economic downturn continues to have adverse effect on our ridership across all markets. Overall, May ridership is down about 4%, the biggest drop in ridership that we've experienced so far since the economic downturn. Year-to-date, ridership is down 2.7%. Ridership is down across the entire system, all three lines. The Harlem and Hudson has decreased 3.5% year-to-date, and New Haven a little over 4%. In commutation ridership, the downward trend deepens. May is down almost 6% versus last year. Non-commutation is somewhat stable, and that's down only about 1% for the year. Commutation to Manhattan is down 3.8%. Intermediate ridership is down 4.2% versus last year. For west of Hudson, ridership has declined 11.7%. Both lines experienced declines. The Port Jervis a little over 14%, Pascack Valley 4%. And for the Pascack Valley, we are beginning to see that the economy is overwhelming any of the positive experiences that we had been seeing from the past service improvements that we had put in. Regarding the connecting services, Hudson Rail Link is down about 5.7%. The Haverstraw-Ossining Ferry down 8.5%. Newburgh Beacon Ferry is down a little over 22%. And we believe that this decrease is a result of the loss of ridership at Beacon Station, which is down about 10%, and that has freed up, of course, a lot of the parking. So a lot of people, in addition to the fact that we've lost the ridership, a lot of people are also parking at Beacon Station, and they've abandoned the ferry for the moment. On a positive note, I just want to let you know that related to the quadricentennial celebrations, we've ran the ferry a few of the weekends this year. On June 7th, it's a Sunday, we operated between 12:30 and 8:30 a two-boat operation. We generated over 4,000 ferry rides for that day. On June 14th, another Sunday, running a similar operation, two-boat operation running all day, we generated over 1,500 rides. And on just this past weekend, we ran on Saturday, July 25th, one-boat operation between 1 and 8, and we generated almost 1,000 rides. So related to discretionary weekend type of thing, we're doing very well with the ferry when it's tied to other bigger events. If you have any questions, glad to answer them.
Are those numbers included in here or not?
No, that's separate. The ferry was, I just wanted to give you a review of that since it wasn't in the book. And we will be doing a couple of more ferry trips on the weekend between now and October.
Do you know which weekends?
Yes, September 5th, September 6th, September 12th, and October 4th.
October
4th.
4th? I'll be sure to try it.
Okay.
Jim?
Excuse me, you mentioned that commutation was down 6%. Is that shown on any of the graphs here, or is that just something? Yes. You're showing a -3.8 on page 49.
No, commutation, that was for year-to-date, it's 5.9%, and it is in the book.
Yeah.
Oh, that was for the
month.
the
This
month.
is
The
year
month
to
of
date.
May.
I see.
Yes.
Okay. The other question I had is that the west of Hudson numbers are pretty startling,
Yes.
and it's saying something about kind of the fragility of the ridership over there, and I'm just wondering, or I would ask whether you've looked into it, substantively to determine, sort of who's not riding.
Well, this is very current, especially on the Pascagoula Valley. The last couple of months, we were actually positive. So this is a new trend that we're seeing, and it is something that we will be looking into. We will be doing our customer satisfaction survey shortly, so we'll be getting some information from that as well. But we will be looking into, why is it happening? In addition to just maybe the economic downturn, there may have been a greater job loss in Orange County as opposed to other counties. I think that has hurt us.
I'm assuming that most of this is in the commutation ridership, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, Susan, what's the unemployment rate in Orange County?
I'll get a current figure, but I know it's going higher now than some of the other areas. I don't know what the exact number is. I'll ask our planning commissioner.
Okay.
Sure.
Any other questions? Ron?
Thank you. Good morning. The capital program highlights are on page 51, and I have a few updates. For Cortlandt Parking, we have bids in, and we'll be evaluating those bids, and we hope to make an award early next month. Stations, the Hudson Line stations, Phillips Manor, Scarborough, and Ossining, our first phase is complete. Those are the inbound platforms. We are switching over. We returned Track 4 to service, and later today we'll be finishing taking out Track 3 between roughly CP 26 and CP 33, Tarrytown to Harmon. So Track 3 will be out for 12 months, and we'll finish up the platforms on that job. Tarrytown is our Tarrytown Station, the platform and overpass job. That's our first stimulus job. That was awarded, and we had a kickoff meeting earlier this month, so we'll be getting that job. At Yankee Stadium, we're essentially cleaning up and closing out that job. We finished the Arts for Transit mosaic was completed, and we'll be unveiling that in the coming month. Poughkeepsie Station improvements, we have bids in for that job. That's our third stimulus project. New Haven Station improvements, Port Chester and Rye, we awarded a contract, and a kickoff meeting was held earlier this month for those two stations. Our second stimulus job was the GCT elevator job, and that was awarded in June, and a kickoff meeting was held for that earlier this month. At the Shops and Yards at Croton Harmon Shop, we're just cleaning up that job. It's supposed to be completed at the end of August, beginning of September. Excuse me, the locomotive shop, we tested the drop table with the locomotive. We took a truck off and put a truck back on. And, at the coach shop, we're actually bringing in a pair of M3s today on track 20 to do some testing with the actual equipment in that job. And as far as rolling stock goes, our coach overhaul, we are just at about the halfway point. We have 50 out of 104 cars accepted, including 4 cab cars, and 4 more are en route. Are there any questions? I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Yeah, Ron, you had mentioned stimulus money on some of these packages or jobs that we're doing. Do you have a percentage of how much was the stimulus money? In other words, was it 50% of the job? Was it the whole job?
100% of the job.
100%.
Each job that we had stimulus money, I think with one exception, is about 100.
Yeah,
Tarrytown's 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the whole project. We gave a list of projects, Carl, and we got them funding, and we're now awarding those contracts.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions?
I know that this is not in your report, and it may not be in your bailiwick particularly, Ron, but can you give us any kind of an informal update on the M8s, how they're doing over there? And
They're moving along. Our representative was just out there, or he may be out there now, Tim McCarthy, but the first 8 pilot cars will be delivered in the fall. We'll have 8 pilot cars around. The production cars won't begin until next year, but fits and starts. The compression testing issue is past us now, and I think we're ready for production as soon as the pilot cars are delivered and tested.
Jim, I would say that, as you know, any car procurement is always a complicated procurement, particularly on the New Haven line. These are the unique cars in the world with their AC/DC capability, so they become that much more complicated. As Ron mentioned, the project is moving along. We should be getting our pilot cars by the end of the year. We will then be testing them, and we start to get our production cars next year. There have been issues with Kawasaki, but on balance, we believe that we're going to get an excellent car. We're pleased with what we're seeing so far. And we continue to work with Kawasaki regularly, including we have high-level meetings with them every month to go through any and all issues with them on the procurement. So it continues to be a priority. One of the highest priorities we have in terms of the capital program is the procurement, successful procurement of these vehicles. I also just want to add to Ron mentioned on the Hudson line, this morning was actually the changeover. So this is now, as we speak, we're switching over. Operation went flawlessly, and so we're well on our way to completing this project on those stations, which then then once we complete Tarrytown, we will then have completed all the Hudson line stations over 2 or 3 programs. And we'll completed with having first-rate stations at all those facilities. So it's really a major milestone in terms of where we are in that project.
Ron, I can tell you that all the reviews I hear about Yankee Stadium are good. They like the facility. They like the ease of getting in and out. I haven't heard one complaint. So, yeah, well, that helps.
Right. Right. You know, Jim, to that point, I want to say one other thing on Yankee Stadium. Beyond the excellent facility, it's a very complicated operation. And Bob Leblong and his people and Sherry Harrington, every day they are working to make sure that the operation works, because unlike everything else we have, this is not a scheduled operation after ball games. And so we're constantly juggling when to run the trains to get the people home while without hurting the other Hudson Line service. And as an example, we had one game last week that started, it was scheduled at 7 o'clock and started at 10 p.m. So we're all set up to take people home at 10:30, and it's the second inning. And that game finished, I think it was about 12:50 or something, yeah. So every single day, we have a team of people up there. We also have George Oakvat has in customer service. They have people who work the information, which is critical since it's not a schedule. We have to tell people where to go, and you have to put that in every single game. So it's a very complicated operation. So I'm really glad people are pleased about it. I just want everyone to understand really how complicated it is and how much effort is put in on the operating side in terms of just to operate this. The other thing we have done is, with led by Bob McClagger, we did a whole review of the service, and we modified the service in July. Changed particularly how we explain to customers when the trains are running, because it's very difficult. There's so many different scenarios. We think that's made a major improvement, and we will continue to monitor the service and see where we can make improvements, because this really is a very complicated and fluid operation. And so we'll constantly be working to try to fine-tune it wherever we can.
Okay. Monthly safety report.
Good morning. I'll summarize the safety results, which are in your books beginning on page 56. These are results through May. And during that period, we had 28 more total employee injuries this year than we did at the same time last year, a 30% increase. Our lost time and restricted duty injuries, adjusted for work hours, were up from 1.0 to 2.2. That's injuries per 200,000 hours worked. And our FRA reportable injuries were up from 1.8 per 200,000 hours worked to 2.7 during that period. The customer injuries on page 58 are down significantly. We had 68 customer injuries during this period this year compared to 122 last year, a 44% decrease. Adjusted for ridership, that resulted in a decrease from 3.7 customer injuries per million rides to 2.2. And the FRA reportable customer injuries were down from 0.5 per million rides to 0.3 per million rides. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
MTA Police report.
Good morning. The MTA Police Department statistical data can be found on pages 60 and 61 of your handout. For the month of June, system-wide, there was a notable decrease of 11% or 31% overall change. From January to June, system-wide, was a difference of 34 or 20% decrease in change. These are in the total major felony categories. For the Metro-North Railroad, difference of -5 on total major felonies, a 38% decrease. And January to June, is a difference of 22 change or -30%. Overall, there were 3 arrests for robberies. In the category of felony assault, there were 8 for 2009, and all 8 resulted in arrests. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of our MTA Police? Okay. We have one information item.
Right.
Included on the agenda today is an informational item that requires no action. What it is it's on Wednesday of this week at the MTA Board meeting, the 2010 preliminary budget and the July financial plan will be presented to you and the rest of the MTA Board. There's 3 key components that are included in that package. which is the development of the mid-year forecast for 2009, the preliminary 2010 budget proposal, as well as the updated financial plan for the years of 2011 through 2013. As it relates to the preliminary 2010 budget proposal for Metro North, when you get that package, you will see a number of key updates that have been incorporated. What that includes is a full-year impact of the June fare increase of 10%, revised baseline revenue projections and ridership projections that will reflect 2009 current trends and 2010 MTA economic and demographics forecasts that have been utilized MTA-wide. You will also see that new subsidies from state legislature actions that were approved back in a couple months ago are not included. They will be dealt with at the MTA level. Our plan also now reflects the full-year impact of ridership related to Yankee Stadium and 125th Street Station. We also will reflect a full-year impact of the non-direct train service reductions on AABB. And you will see that we have controlled growth of expenses. You will see that there's continued reductions in administrative costs. And you will see also that there's self-funding of new needs and FRA mandates. The plan for is that this will be under review and discussion, and ultimately in November we will be presenting to you the final proposed 2010 budget.
Kind of complicated, but
Yes.
any questions? Okay. We have no action items. We're into procurements. Howard?
Okay, on the procurements, we have a number of procurements today. First, in the joint procurement, we have two joint procurements for you. One is Metro North, Long Island Railroad, New York City Transit with Sistra Engineering, and the second is a joint agreement between Metro North and MTA Bus for personal consulting services of Martin Krieger. In addition, there will be three, Long Island Railroad and New York City Transit are approving three procurements that Metro North is joint on as well this month. In addition, we have 13 procurements totaling 38, a little bit over $38 million. Let me highlight a few of them for you, and then we can take any further questions. First one is Sistra, which is one of the joint procurements, and this is a procurement for us to first get a license to use their simulation services and then to enter into a not-to-exceed contract that will allow us to maintain the database and do simulations on such things as power supply, work to determine how to set our substations, very nuts and bolts but critical pieces of information that we need in terms of how to operate the railroad. Second one I'd like to highlight is Progress Rail. This is a procurement through an RFP to rebuild 6 locomotives for west of Hudson, as well as we have an option for 2 more, which we plan to exercise later in the contract. With the completion of this contract, we will have 15 locomotives west of Hudson, all of which will have been rebuilt in the recent past. The next one highlight is FJ Sciami Construction. This is award of a contract for us to do the work in the old tennis court space. This is a project we've talked about for quite a period of time. Very pleased that we can award the contract now. What this will do, this will be the construction of welfare and locker facilities for Metro North employees, both our train and engine crews as well as our people who work in GCT. They will now move out of the basement. That area will be renovated and rented out at a much higher rate than we previously got for the space we're building in now. So it'll be a positive for us financially. In addition, in this contract, we have an option as to how much exactly we build, depending on the results of an RFP that the real estate department went out with to look for recreational use of some of this space within the old tennis court. And they'll be coming back to the board in September. They'll either have consummated the deal or not. They're in the midst of negotiations with a couple of parties as we speak. And that would then, this contract gives us an option to build over the space if they're unsuccessful, and if they're successful, we would leave the space for that recreational use. It's It's a big space. It's 3 stories, and Ron, do you know, or? All right, so we'll get back to you. Don, it's a very big space. It's 3 floors.
21 million to renovate.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money, and
We'll get back to you. It's a significant number of square footage. I just don't know off the top.
no one's jumping up to help us either.
Yeah.
I said no one's jumping up to help us with the numbers.
Yeah, unfortunately. But I will say Bob McClargood. Bob is up in Albany at a meeting, so. Yeah. What? Danny thinks it's approximately 100,000 square feet, but we'll get the exact number for you. Also, it's a big space. It's a very big space. In addition, we have a contract with STV. This is the construction management for the Cortland parking facility. As Ron mentioned, we're finalizing bids, and it's our intent to award that contract, and that will be a major construction of parking of 750 spaces in a critical spot on the Hudson line. So that'll be one of our biggest parking, if not our biggest parking project in this capital program. And then finally, we also have one for construction services for WSP Cells. That's to rebuild the bridge in Mount Vernon. And there we're getting stimulus money from the state of New York to progress that contract. So those are the ones I wanted to highlight. Be happy to answer any questions.
What is the potential or proposed leasing opportunity for the space that is currently occupied in the basement by the construction and other crews?
Yeah, Jim, we would have to go through an RFP process which would firmly identify it. One part of it is directly beneath the drugstore. Is that a Walmart or not a Walmart? Rite Aid. It's a Rite Aid, so it's directly beneath there, and real estate has had some preliminary conversations with Rite Aid about their interest. The other one is directly beneath the storefronts out on 42nd Street. So that all will be through a separate RFP process.
That explains it. I mean, we've been around some of the sort of the deep recesses of Grand Central, and that's not that.
No. There's also always a need for storage space in Grand Central for the tenants, and that's another potential use.
Okay, any questions on the procurements as submitted? I need a motion. Second? All in favor? Any contrary? Carried. Okay. Our next meeting is going to be September the 21st at 8:30 a.m. I need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.